Adam, how would you like to turn into an idiot?
I'm not sure I follow.
For our new sponsor, Village Idiot Pub, the 5K.
Oh, yeah. Village Idiot Pub in historic Cocoa Village is holding an event for the Children's Hunger Project called The Village Has Lost Its Idiot Again.
The run is a 5K held right in front of Village Idiot Pub on Harrison Street in Cocoa.
It's an event to raise money and awareness for the Children's Hunger Project. While you can run, you don't have to. You can walk, skip, or drink your way to the end.
So bust out those costumes, bedazzlers, and sequins and get creative, as there will be awards for the best dressed fool or idiot. The theme is Masquerade Ball.
Also, you've heard them on Living Podcariously do a performance, as well as guesting on the Twisted 10. Our friends of the podcasts, Hot Pink, will be performing for the Village Idiot at 7 p.m.
This 5K is not a timed event. It's a fun run. It's really about having fun and raising some money for the Children's Hunger Project.
Village Idiot Pub has over 30 beers on tap, including ciders as well as Hefeweizens, my favorite, hundreds of bottle choices, and a great selection of wine.
So get your friends together for the run, then enjoy the board games, puzzles, and giant Jenga inside, as well as Hot Pink's performance.
Jason and the rest of the staff are awesome and will take excellent care of you.
Mention either one of our shows to the staff and get 10% off your tab.
You can catch the entire cast from Living Podcariously as well as the Twisted 10 there on April 1st for this run. I'm thinking we should set up mics and let our listeners and the people at Village Idiot add some commentary.
Ooh, that could be dangerous.
The Village Idiot Run will be on April 1st, directly in front of the Village Idiot Pub on Harrison Street in Cocoa, directly across from the big park.
Visit Village Idiot Pub on Facebook for full event details.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. All three engines up and burning. 2, 1, 0, and liftoff.
1, 2, 3, 4.
You're listening to The Twisted 10, bringing you original and unique, host-created top 10 list, recorded live in world-famous Cocoa Beach, Florida, with hosts Tach Van Sickle and Adam Poston.
All right, welcome to another episode of The Twisted 10. I'm your host. Actually, I'm not your host this week, but I'm one of the regular hosts on the show. My name is Adam. If you're a first-time listener to The Twisted 10, this is a unique and original top 10 list podcast. The hosts, or guest hosts in some cases, come up with their own ideas for the top 10 list and bring it to the show for us to listen to, tear apart, commentate on, etc. So, again, my name's Adam. I'm not your host this week. Sitting on the lady chase, of course.
Hi, I'm Andrea Joy.
I
am not your host this week.
You're not the host this week either?
No,
right.
Not the stress of making a list this week.
We're missing Tach this week. So he is off doing SpaceX kind of stuff. And sitting on the other chair in Tach's place this week,
it is Jay Alvarez, and I am another just curious bystander this week, I guess.
Oh, yeah. You know, when we started doing this type of podcast, we realized that the week of being it wasn't necessarily a good thing because it does require a ton of research, but it's still fun to do. So I'd like to introduce our guest host for this week. This week we have got Mr. Dan Cummins hosting the Twisted 10.
Thank you.
Yeah, welcome, Dan.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. I feel like all I do is research right now. I was researching for an episode for my own podcast, Timesuck. I was H.H. Holmes, this serial killer back in the Chicago's World's Fair, and then I got a bonus episode about the Third Reich. So I've been researching Hitler, a lot of dark stuff.
Wow,
so it was actually
that's got to be an interesting Google search history now.
Oh man, it's when I'm at coffee shops doing my research. I almost just want to like I have like books with swastikas on them, like Hitler research. I have like serial killer stuff on my screen. It's like I'm sure I make people, and I look creepy, so I'm sure I make people real nervous. So,
so for our listeners, we've got Dan on Skype with us. He's out in LA right now. We can actually see the sun behind him in the background a little bit.
You know, actually, I'm in Idaho. I was in LA. I'm living in. I just moved to Coeur d'Alene, and so I am looking out. It looks sunny the way that it's set up behind me. in front of me, it's actually snowing. So I'm jealous of where you guys are.
Wow.
So hold on, because I've actually driven through Coeur d'Alene. I had a long and storied history as a truck driver for a little while. How are you loving it up there? Because I've always wanted to just stop the truck and abandon it on the side of 90.
You know, Coeur d'Alene is. I'm from Idaho originally, and I'm from a little kind of dumpy town in central Idaho. I love it, but it's no place I would want to live. It's like 400 people, middle of nowhere, and Coeur d'Alene was always looked at as like the hoity-toity fancy town of Idaho, like the jewel. Yeah, it is beautiful. It's so nice. Like the people are super friendly. It's pretty. It's laid back. I love it.
Nice.
But it's snowing.
But it is snowing.
That's too cold.
Yeah, it's been a hard winter too this year. There's literally the snow has not left the ground since early November.
Oh my God. We drove to South Carolina this last weekend to visit some relatives, and that was cold enough for me. It was in the low 30s, and let me tell you, that chills me to the bone. I am not happy in that weather.
You would not be cut out for Coeur d'Alene then. That's I'm like low 30s in the winter. That's wow, what a beautiful day.
They were just commenting how warm it's been in Chicago. They actually went through the first January and February without any snow on record.
You know, I was just in Chicago at a club called Zany's like 2 weekends ago. And all I needed was a hoodie for the whole week. It was crazy. I leave, because Chicago's usually pretty brutal in the winter. And I want to say it reached 60 degrees one day. It was insane.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that's a party.
Yeah, it was nice. And not even windy. Not even windy for once.
60 is freezing.
So for our listeners, real quick, Dan Cummins, if you haven't heard of him, he hosts a podcast called Timesuck. We'll put it in the show notes as well, but you can find it in Google. You can find it in Google Play. You can find it in iTunes, Stitcher, all the typical places you're going to find a podcast. Same place you find this one, you'll find Timesuck. It is a fantastic podcast. I've binge listened to all, 24, 25 episodes that are out so far.
Yeah, thanks.
Dan does stand-up. You might have seen him on shows like the Jay Leno Show or the Conan O'Brien Show.
Late night stuff.
Yeah, late night. That's a cool gig. Let me tell you, that was a fun internet black hole to get stuck in for a while, looking up some of the stuff that you've done in the past. I've seen a few of them before, just, naturally watching what have you, but before you come on the show, I like to research the guest and do stuff like that. And yeah, that was a fun black hole to get stuck in. You look a little different.
I got to put some new stuff in. I got a bunch of video from the new album that I got to put on because most of my stuff is so old. I had long hair and no beard.
Exactly.
So
the Comedy Central special.
Yeah, people will come to the show and they won't realize it's me until halfway through the show. They're like, "Oh, that really is him." I look like a different person.
Maybe if you did it upside down, so your beard would be your hair and switch it.
If I could just tilt my head, if I could just rip it around. Yeah, that's me. But this last week or this week actually, just came out today. My topic was Billy the Kid. I love Westerns.
Nice.
And so that's the list I made for you guys. And actually, after making this list, it's a list of outlaws. I found some of them so fascinating. I kind of wish I would have went with a few of these guys as opposed to Billy the Kid. I love Billy the Kid, but some of these other guys, I was like, oh, wow, man, I had no idea. I hadn't heard of some of these people, and some of the people I had heard of, and I thought all their stuff was Hollywood kind of nonsense. It turned out there was a lot of truth to the stories. It was just such a crazy era, like late 19th century Wild West.
Cool.
Yeah.
And so my list, just to give you guys the twist, it's 10 various Wild West outlaws. One of them is complete and utter nonsense. One of these people is not real.
Nice.
Awesome.
He's
Wonder
bringing
if
us a
my
twist.
relative is in there.
Oh, what? Who are you related to?
Jesse James.
Jesse James is the first one I'm going to bring up. No kidding.
Oh, yeah, my family.
I call that one fake. That's the one that's fake. No, I'm kidding.
There was no Jesse James. So let's get into Jesse James then. So let's he's number 10.
Number 10.
10.
Yes.
Number 10. So I'm going to give a various amount of info. Some of these people more info than others. But Jesse James, he was a bank and train robber in the American Wild West, known for leading the members of the James Younger Gang of Outlaws. He was born in September 5th, 1847 in Kearney, Missouri, and he and his brother Frank served for the Confederate Army before embarking on their criminal careers. And they made a name for themselves as kind of like the premier, I guess, bank robbers of their day and train robbers. And there's kind of like this mythology that they were like Robin Hood, where they would like steal and then give to the poor. Turns out that's nonsense. They did the stealing part. The stealing part is totally true, but then when it came to giving to the poor, they're like, let's skip that part of the Robin Hood mythology and
Nice.
and just keep the money. So From 1860 all the way to 1882, they had an especially long career. They were the most feared kind of outlaws as far as robbers in American history, responsible for more than 20 bank and train robberies, the murders of countless individuals, stole an estimated $200,000, which would be well over $2 million in today's dollars. But that doesn't really translate that well, though, because even though it'd only be over $2 million in today's dollars, you could do a lot more with $200,000 in the late 19th century than you could with $2 million today.
Yeah.
Right.
Like it was a tremendous amount of money as far as what goods you could buy and land and all that kind of stuff.
Well, that's like in the A Million Ways to Die in the West. Have you ever seen that? They say, when one guy holds up an actual dollar bill, that's a dollar right there. It's unheard of to see those things.
Yeah, money went a long, long ways. I mean, like you could buy land for like $20, that kind of stuff. And in 1879, the James brothers, they had planned one more robbery with Charlie and Robert Ford, two of the members. Little did they know that the governor of Missouri had put together a reward so large, $25,000 on your relative, Andrea, his head. That's a ton of money, $25,000.
We ain't cheap.
Yeah, after breakfast on April 3rd, 1882, Jesse turned to straighten a picture on the wall of his home. And Bob, one of his longtime gang members, Bob Ford, shot him in the back of the head.
Oh.
So he was dead instantly at the age of 34 years old.
By his own crew.
Nowadays, you just have to worry about someone turning snitch. Back then, bullet to the head.
Bullet to the head, man. Man, people just got, that's what I've learned doing this list. People got shot all of the time back then. Like there was just so much shooting in the Wild West.
Now, was it for a reward? What did he shoot him for?
Yeah, $25,000
for the reward.
Yep, $25,000. I mean, and you think about that, over 22 years of robberies, they made a total of $200,000. So $25,000 in one bullet was a tremendous amount of money, for these guys.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah,
that's exactly what the FBI or whoever the hell the county sheriffs or whoever put the bounty up for it was hoping.
Yeah,
it's exactly what they were hoping for.
Yeah.
So wait, but wouldn't he have had a warrant too if he was also part of the gang? Like, did he report that and get the reward and then get arrested?
What's funny is it didn't say specifically on that, but it's like it was an interesting time where I feel like it's kind of comparable to like a lower level gang member today. It's like if you rat out the guy at the top,
right?
You get amnesty, and you don't serve time. So I think it was a deal where it's like you get him, and we'll give you the reward, and we'll forget about what you did. We want the head of the snake dead.
So he copped a plea that included murder.
Yeah, basically,
which is a worse crime than bank robbery.
So if they were on this spree for 22 years and he was 34, he was 12 when he started.
Oh, you know what? That's a very good point. Like he couldn't have been the initial leader. So I think the younger gang started, and then he joined in and became the James Younger gang. Because absolutely, that would be. But what's weird? A lot of these guys, like Billy the Kid, we're going to listen to later, did start when they were like 14, 15 years old.
I guess girls were getting married when they were 12 back then.
All you need is 12 head of cattle.
You're an adult.
Well, I remember like doing a thing on Houdini later, and Houdini like left home to provide to like go get work and send money home to his family when he was 12. So it's like these guys, it was children were not protected the same way they are now.
Yeah, different time.
Too bad.
Yeah, I love the Houdini episode. That was a great Timesuck episode, by the way.
Yeah, it was a learning experience where I remember thinking about my son. My son's 11, and he couldn't survive 90 minutes on his own in the real world.
My son is also 11. And
my daughter is 11.
Yeah.
I can't trust my son with boiling an egg.
Yeah, right? Isn't that crazy? And back then, you would be, these kids, I remember like going back to the Houdini, so maybe he actually was 12 when he started, because Houdini had a full-time job when he was 8 years old.
Oh my gosh.
Like there were no child labor laws back then. They're just like, you want to shine some shoes all day? Go for it.
8 years old, your pappy hanging you down the shotgun. You're the man of the house now.
Yeah. It's crazy. My grandpa, he grew up on a farm. He said when he was 4, he had early morning chores. He was literally helping milk the cows when he was 4 years old.
At 4, I was going into my mom's bed because it was cold outside and my toesies were wheezing and I had a nightmare.
Exactly. That's why when people talk, I've never thought it was a good idea to go back in the past. It just seems super shitty back then. So next outlaw is number 9, is a guy, I had never heard of this guy. Rufus Buck. What a name, Rufus.
No kidding.
Born in 1873, dead before the age of 25, he was the leader of the Rufus Buck gang, so he got his name on his gang. It was a multiracial gang, which I didn't even realize was a thing back in the Wild West. The members were African-American and Creek Indian, and they robbed, raped, and killed in the Indian Territory of the Arkansas, Oklahoma area from 1895 to 1896. And here's a list of some crimes committed by the Rufus Buck gang. In 1895, they killed a U.S. Deputy Marshal, John Garrett. Also came across a white man and his daughter in a wagon. The man was held at gunpoint. The girl was taken by the gang. They ended up kind of taking a small harem of women as they went about their crimes. They robbed a bunch of country stores in Oklahoma and murdered 2 white women and a 14-year-old girl in August of 1895. Also in August 1895, supposedly raped a Mrs. Hassan near Sapulpa, Oklahoma. And then her and 2 of 3 other female victims of the gang, a Miss Aries and an Indian girl named Sapulpa, were also killed. A 4th victim, Mrs. Wilson, was reported to have recovered, and they were supposedly raped.
They're straight up bastards. They're just out there killing all sorts of people. At least Jesse James was just robbing people.
These guys were
too.
These were the more of the rape and pillage variety. Apparently, the Rufus Buck gang, and they were captured on August 8th, 1895, by an Indian white posse, charged with rape, sentenced to death. But the case is appealed all the way to the Supreme Court, which was unusual for kind of outlaws. Usually, they just hung them real fast. And then on July 1st, 1896, the entire gang was hung in unison. They just hung them all, big old gallows, and then just all the ropes dropped. And they were the only people to be hung in that area for rape. They were never actually charged with murder. They just hung them for the rape charge.
Oh, man.
So that was Rufus Buck and his gang. And I until reading that, I just, all the ones I'd heard about as far as outlaws were always like the Jesse James or the Billy Kid. They're always white dudes, so I didn't realize they were. It never
occurred to me that, especially that a man named Rufus. My immediate thought was, oh, white guy named Rufus. How weird.
Yeah,
and I was like, oh, no, black dude.
Yeah. My immediate thought for that was I'm related to Rufus, just because of the name. I've got a Rufus in my family.
Do you really? Like how far back?
Uncle. So on my distant uncle.
You have an uncle Rufus?
Yes, and I have an uncle Theron. Yeah, I've got some bizarre names.
Well, Theron sounds good. Rufus, I'm kind of, I think where Jay's going. Like Rufus, I picture like a guy with like a corncob pipe and a straw hat.
Oh, you know my relatives.
Like he doesn't own shoes. He's always barefoot, Rufus.
That definitely sounds like my family.
That's all my family in Oklahoma.
Yeah, Andrea's from Oklahoma, so yeah.
Oh, really? You got some Okies?
Oh, yes, born and raised.
Okay. So some Rufuses out there. This next guy has a better name. Number 8. Finally has a nickname. I feel like a lot of these guys had cool nicknames. Cherokee Bill Goldsby, which is not a last name I would expect, with the first part being Cherokee Bill.
Cherokee Bill, and he's Jewish.
Oddly enough, he was Navajo, as you'll find out.
How does that work?
Yeah, exactly. Born in 1876, dead at 20 in 1896. Cherokee Bill killed 8 men, including his brother-in-law. And he was he was mulatto father, and then Cherokee white and black mother. And in the spring of 1894, at the age of 18, Cherokee Bill's crime spree began when he shot a man named Jake Lewis for beating up his younger brother. So maybe it started with protecting the fam, and then I guess the guy would later recover from the wounds. He thought he killed this guy, so he took off, fled for the Creek and Seminole nations, joined up with some outlaws, which was kind of common for these guys back then. Jim and Bill Cook. And afterwards, Bill Cook and Cherokee Bill rounded up a gang and began to terrorize Oklahoma. Started out small, first accused of stealing some whiskey, horse theft. Then they advanced to robbing banks, stores, and stagecoaches, and just kind of ruthless. I guess just kind of known for shooting just anyone who got in their way. On July 16th, the gang reportedly robbed a man named William Drew. 2 days later, held up the Frisco train at Red Fork. However, due to the express messenger having had the foresight to hide the money behind some boxes, they didn't really take much money. It's kind of a theme with them. They never really got much money, but they robbed a lot of places for very little money. They stole $500 from the Lincoln County Bank in Chandler, Oklahoma, killed one person, wounded others. One of their gang members was shot and killed in that process. There was a Wild West shootout in Oklahoma on Sapulpa. Sapulpa keeps coming up. Is that still a place, Sapulpa? Have you heard of that?
Uh-huh.
Oh, okay. It sounded like a fake town to me.
Yeah,
until it came up in a second
person.
one. Ooh, maybe one of these is fake. Well, in Sapulpa, Oklahoma, they had a shootout. And they killed a lawman in that time, so now they're in some real trouble. And that was a thing too. It felt like in the Wild West, if you killed like random townsfolk, they'd be like, come on, man, like ease up.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't do that.
But when you killed a deputy or a sheriff, then they're like, right, now we got to track you down. We got to get the Pinkertons or the Marshals or something on you. Yep. Well, they robbed the J.A. Parkinson and Company store in Okmulgee. Is that still a town?
Okmulgee.
Okay,
Yep,
Okmulgee, Oklahoma.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
On September 1st, they got $600 there. That was big for them. Then they robbed the depot of the Missouri Pacific Railroad in Claremore, Oklahoma, less than 2 hours later. Robbed a railroad agent in Chateau. 9 days later, they wrecked the Kansas City and Pacific Express 5 miles south of Wagoner, Oklahoma, making off with some loot there. And just kept going, like little spots here, little spots there. Finally got caught on April 13th, 1895, and quickly sentenced to death is Cherokee Bill. And I guess he was just kind of casual about it. He didn't care, didn't seem concerned that he was sentenced to death. And we find out that it was because someone had snuck him a gun, which I'm amazed how often that comes up. All these guys were constantly having like guns snuck to them in jails and prison. Like prison was so different back then, or like usually it was like a courthouse.
Well, wait a minute. Is it really different? How different is it? You can get stuff snuck in jail apparently now really easily.
Not a gun.
Yeah, I imagine it being like something out of DuckTales. You get like a gun or a nail file brought in through a cake. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Exactly. He gets a gun smuggled to him by a trustee on July 26, 1895. He attempts jailbreak. A gun battle breaks out between him and the prison guards. He kills one of the prison guards. The shootout results in a standoff when the guards are unable to disarm Cherokee Bill. But then another inmate, this guy Henry Starr, who is another outlaw, he volunteers to kind of help disarm Cherokee Bill if they'll kind of go lenient on him going forward, and it works. He actually does disarm Cherokee Bill, and Teddy Roosevelt actually like kind of semi-pardons him, lets him out early, and then he'll go on to rob more people later. So that was awesome.
That happens.
And in the meantime, Cherokee Bill's lawyer now is working on an appeal. Somehow he isn't quickly hung, even though he killed a prison guard. And maintaining that Bill had not received a fair trial initially by Judge Isaac Parker, who had characterized Cherokee Bill as a bloodthirsty mad dog who killed for the love of killing and as the most vicious of all outlaws in Oklahoma Territory.
That's a hell of a title.
It is, and he seems like a badass, this guy, like a crazy dude, because when his appeal doesn't work, he's sentenced to die, and then reportedly when he's asked if he had any last words, he says, quote, "I came here to die, not to make a speech."
That's a fucking man's man right there.
Oh my God, yeah.
If Nick Offerman was ever sentenced to death, I'd like to think that those were his last words.
I came here to die, not to make a speech. Oh my God. Yeah, and then there was some other thing, I guess, when he was like, so he says that he's getting ready, and then when he's at the has the rope on his neck, his actual like very last words are, "This is as good a day to die as any," and then
wow,
dead he goes. So yeah, and that's kind of a common thing I noticed with these outlaws too. I don't know if it's just I mean, a lot of it comes from newspaper reports, so from eyewitnesses, so I don't know why they would make it up, but man, these guys were just like hard to the very end. Like, I feel like I would be just whimpering and crying for mercy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, there's also a lot of lead in the water back then. The head, mine isn't exactly in the right place.
Well, yeah, I want to think of them as like criminal masterminds, but maybe they were just, like you said, just kind of dull people who are just like, yeah, why not? I might as well be dead. I don't care.
Opium was legal, those types of things.
Wouldn't that be weird if like the best bank robbers of all time were just people who got talked into it? Like, hey, you want to rob a bank? Well, yeah, and that's it. It's
right. It was just that simple. Well, a lot of these guys, it's like, I think different than today, maybe a little bit, is just extreme poverty and the hardness of life back then. Like, people died so often and jobs were so horrible that I feel like there was a fair amount of people who stole cattle and stole this and stole that and ended up falling into these gangs because it was kind of like there were orphans were super common. Like, I noticed a lot of these outlaws, their parents are dead by the time they're 13. They're on their own. And it's kind of that or, die themselves.
You brought that up in that in the internet scam episode on Timesuck, where like the people out in Lagos are just it's not, they're pulling scams not necessarily because they're horrible people. They are,
right.
But it's kind of the situation they're in also.
Oh yeah, you're right. Like those Nigerian email scammers, it's like it's easy to say like, these pieces of shit, like why are they doing this? But it's like we're saying that from our comfortable, first world lives over in America.
As we're Skyping, yes.
So we're Skyping.
You presented such an interesting twist on the Nigerian scam, the entire market of those people that I had never really considered, is the perspective of we're so impoverished that if we're able to scam some fat American out of $100 here and there or whatever, it's a pain in the ass for him, but it's a livelihood for us. That's how we feed our children. You presented such an interesting twist in that episode. That was fascinating because I had never considered the opposite side of that spectrum and thought, it's tolerated over there. Well, not necessarily tolerated, but it's not chased because they have so many other problems in that country.
Oh, it's such a hellhole over there. They got Boko Haram and all these people raping and murdering, and like the average person lives in. I like the what was the term they had? It was not extreme poverty. Absolute.
Absolute. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, like what a horrible term if you're living in, quote, absolute poverty. Like you can't be more impoverished.
Yeah.
Okay, number 7. I love this guy's nickname. Number 7 is Blackjack Ketchum. Like Blackjack, that's a good outlaw nickname.
That's a cool name. Yeah, agree.
Yeah, that's a man with a deck of cards on him.
Exactly. He knows a couple tricks. He can do a little close-up magic. He was born on Halloween, 1863 in San Saba County, Texas. And he was part of an outlaw gang. And they were train robbers and stagecoach robbers. At one point in 1892, he held up a train on the Santa Fe Railroad and got $20,000. So, it was a pretty successful kind of bank and train robber. On December 12th, 1895, Blackjack and several other men killed John N. Jap Powers. These nicknames on these guys, that sounds fairly racist.
A little bit.
But that's the nickname, Jap Powers. And so then they've killed somebody. So now they're hightailing out of Texas. They head off to New Mexico. And then in New Mexico, the Ketchum gang, I guess they were well known. Like back then, there was kind of like a prestige to some of these gang members, where it's like the appeal of an outlaw. But they would take the money they made robbing stagecoaches and trains. They'd buy themselves some fancy clothes. They would show up in town and be buying drinks at the saloon for lots of women and dressed up, and were kind of like little minor celebrities in New Mexico. And in September 3rd, 1897, Blackjack and his gang rob another train, making another $20,000 in gold and $40,000 in silver. So again, pretty successful.
Yeah.
Yeah, the big time money. That's lots of money to throw around to the ladies of New Mexico. July 11th, 1899, the gang strikes again. After camping at the head of the Dry Canyon in northeast New Mexico, Sam Ketchum, Bill Carver, Elza Lay, and an outlaw named McGinnis made off with $50,000 from a train in Folsom, New Mexico. So these guys, they're very good at this.
They really knew their targets compared to the $500 here and there from number 8. It was they're hitting high dollar targets in this one.
Well, they had, and I guess they were very well armed was part of their thing. They had high-power rifles. They had smokeless powder for kind of setting off some kind of explosions and things. So that was part of their why they were so good, is they were kind of like Chicago gangsters in the 20s and 30s. They just were better armed than the actual police trying to stop them. And in one of their battles, Sam Ketchum and McGinnis are wounded. The posse who was trying to catch him, they fare even worse. A sheriff and another deputy, they're killed. And so now Sam and McGinnis are taken into custody, where Sam has developed gangrene from his wound. McGinnis later recovered to serve time in the Santa Fe Penitentiary. On August 16th, Elza Lay was arrested, later tried and convicted for the murder of Ed Farr, sentenced to life in prison. So a lot of these things never last for long. That's another thing I noticed. Outside of Jesse James, very few of these runs lasted more than maybe like 2 years.
Yeah, that's a good point. Of course, their lifespans didn't really last very long back then either in general.
Oh, yeah.
If you weren't a criminal.
Most of these guys were dead by 25.
Yeah.
And Blackjack, so his brother is caught. All these other guys are caught. He tries to make a final solitary attempt at train robbery in August 6th, 1899. This does not work out well for him.
Uh-oh.
He boards a train from the blind side of the baggage car. He planned to force the train to stop, but the conductor has a shotgun, is ready for him, and basically blows his arm almost completely off.
Oh.
Yeah, but he doesn't die, and he actually escapes. He jumps off of the train, and now he's down to one arm, but somehow doesn't bleed to death. and basically just like lays there. He can't get on his horse and is just stuck on the side of these railroad tracks for 2 days. He later reports, I tried a dozen times to mount my horse, but I was too weak to do it, weary and dizzy from the pain. He tries to wait for some more of his posse to show up, but they don't. And then finally, another train comes by, and he draws a gun on them. And the conductor said, quote, "We just came to help you, but if this is the way you feel, we'll just go ahead and leave you." And at that point, this poor one-armed Blackjack just basically begs them to take him to nearby town so he doesn't die. And so he is taken. He's taken to Trinidad, Colorado, placed in this hospital. His arm is amputated. What's left, it's kind of like dangling. I guess it's pretty gory. He pleads innocent, but the judge finds him guilty, sentences him to death by hanging. And this is like the most horrific hanging I read about. He was scheduled on April 26, 1901 to be hung. And I guess it was like a big attraction. This is so morbid. But a lot of times these outlaw hangings, it would be like a big deal in the town, and people would gather kind of like for a concert.
Yeah, like a fair day or something. Yeah.
Right. You'd have like the entire town, like, women and kids and everything, out having snacks, like getting ready for, whoever to be hung. And they got a fucking show this day. They got a serious show. So the town of Clayton, they have no experience hanging a man, and there was debate concerning the length of the rope. Oh, no. So the night before, they do a dry run, and the rope was tested by attaching a 200-pound sandbag to the noose, dropping it through the trap. Finally, at 1:30 p.m., Blackjack Ketchum is taken to the scaffold. They're adjusting his hood, and I guess Ketchum says, again, one of these badasses, he says, quote, "Hurry up, boys, let's get this over with."
Nice.
Yeah, because he's got things to do.
Yeah. Finally, Sheriff Garcia, it takes him 2 blows with a hatchet to cut the rope. Tom falls through the trap. But unfortunately, the inexperienced hangman had forgotten about the sandbag they used to test the rope. So the sandbag's still there.
So he's tiptoeing on top of the sandbag?
Well, the sandbag, the way, like, his feet don't quite hit the ground, but the force of him falling by the sudden stop essentially rips his head off.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and
all right.
So it says when Blackjack fell through the drop, he was immediately decapitated. The black hood pinned to his shirt was the only thing that kept his head from rolling around on the ground. A few minutes later, the doctor still goes through the formality of pronouncing him dead. I feel like that's a little bit of overkill at that point. And then prior to burial, they sewed his head back on so he could have, I guess, what they considered a proper burial.
Boys, this is going to be an open casket.
Yeah, but man, what a show for those people. It's like, oh my God, that's so gruesome. Like watching a hanging, but then the hanging just literally like rips the guy's head off, but then the cloth of the little black thing you're wearing causes the head to kind of basically flop down on the body.
Well, that's why you go to hangings. It's like going to NASCAR events. You go because you're hoping you see the train wreck.
That's true. I'm sure they were like, that was the best hanging we'll ever see in our lives.
There are so many of our NASCAR dads that are our listeners that are now yelling at Jay for that comment. I got into an argument one time about that.
Oh yeah,
we can tangent on we can tangent on NASCAR all day long about you don't go to NASCAR for the wrecks. Well, that's like a touchdown in a football game. That's what you're there. That's what everybody stands up for and cheers.
But the purists claim that's not true, though, right? They claim it's like you watch it for the skill. Yeah. I don't get it either. I understand people like it, but I'm just like, I've tried watching it, and I'm like, they're just going around. They just keep going around and around.
Exactly.
Just look out the window on a road trip. Cars everywhere driving.
Yeah. It's kind of like soccer. I try to get into soccer, but I'm just like, maybe if the score was like 30-40, I'd be into it. But I'm like, I'm not going to watch for an hour and then it's like one goal.
Yeah, make the field like a tenth the size, and then that might make it a little bit more interesting.
Yeah, it's a tough time. It's a hard life being a soccer fan.
That's true.
Okay, number 6. We're going to end the first half on a big bang here. This guy was maybe the most prolific as far as killing outlaw I read about, and his nickname, he lives up to it. It's James Killer Miller.
Yep. Okay.
Nice.
You've heard of this guy?
Nope.
Oh, yeah. We just said exactly. James Killer Miller. This guy is unbelievable. Maybe the darkest and most sadistic figure I read about from the Old West. He was a paid assassin and a gunslinger, known to have killed at least 14 people, though legend has it the number was closer to 50. He was more into killing than he was into robbing. He was also known as Deacon Jim because he regularly went to church and never smoked or drank. He was just a purist. He just killed.
He's got to be a good Christian man about it.
I know. That is such a weird, this guy's terrifying to me. Just the guy who goes to church on Sunday. But then also he said, according to what I read, his rate was anywhere from $150 to $2,000 per kill. And you pay his rate, no questions asked. He's going to go kill who you want killed.
Wow. Oh, wow.
Yeah, and he had his last words, just kind of skip ahead before I get into what he did, when he was a lynch mob finally got him in an Oklahoma jail because he was tried a few times, but he kept getting away with his crimes, and they were like, we're not having it anymore. A lynch mob takes him from the authorities, takes him to a barn where they hang him, and right before they hung him, his last words were, "Let her rip." I love these guys. Just so bad. So he was born on October 25th, 1861, Van Buren, Arkansas. And he's all these myths get thrown around with these guys. And this one I found it didn't seem that accurate. But there's a legend that when he was 8, he killed his own grandparents. But I think that's just because he became such a brutal killer later. They started throwing more stuff on his mythology.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But by 1880, he was documented as living with his widowed mom and siblings in Coryell County. 4 years later, his sister Georgia marries a man named John Coop. And I guess Killer Miller did not like this man. And on July 30th, 1884, John Coop was killed by a shotgun blast to the face while he was in bed at his home. And there was no witnesses to this, but everybody assumes that Jim did it. And then he fled to get away from this. And then, so afterwards, Miller hooks up with an outlaw gang in San Saba County, Texas, robbing trains and stagecoaches. He did get into that for a little while, often killing in the process. And then he purchased a saloon in San Saba. And it was at that time he embarked on his career as assassin, casually proclaiming again that he would just kill anybody for $150 to $2,000. I don't know what determined that rate. Like, it's a big window. Like, I don't know if it was like, it never says there. Like, I don't know if it was like a little man who wasn't good with a gun. He's like, yeah, $150. That'll be an easy one. But if it was some guy with a reputation, maybe he had to jack it up to $2,000.
Man, so this is a business owner. He owns a saloon. So I wonder if it's the stereotypical, hey, you go in there and ask for, this guy, Killer Miller, whatever, and he's in the back somewhere. So you go up to the bar to order a drink, and you order a very specific drink, and that's the cue to bring him back to the back room. You know what I mean? I hope this guy's not the made up one, because I'm fascinated with this story.
I would just love to see him in that back bar room and just be like, "Yep, that'll cost you $200." Right, 2,000 exactly. If you want me to get fancy with it.
and he sounds like, he reminds me of like a Wild West, like Christian Bale in American Psycho. He was known for being very well dressed, very meticulous, and very just calm about, killing people. He seemed, like a true sociopath.
Yep, absolutely.
And he wasn't like a quick draw. He wasn't the guy with a 6-shooter on his hip. His style was just to ambush people and just dispatch of them with his shotgun. So he was just like, that's the way that works best. Didn't care about shooting people in the back. It's just, however, what's the best way to get rid of that person.
Assassinations are you don't really hear real stories about assassinations too much anymore. But
right,
North Korea. Did you hear about the two? Girls in North Korea.
2 women who they snuck up and wiped that stuff on his face, and it was some kind of poison.
Oh, yeah, it was
Kim Jong, whatever.
Kim Jong-un's brother.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Kim Jong something or another.
I can't remember.
He was dead in like 20 minutes, I want to say, right? Because they
used nerve agent.
The dosage was so high, or whatever. The
DX or something.
It was a fascinating story. So the two of them, to make this real short, the first girl comes up and spritzes him with just regular water. And, he was freaking out because he thought that was the assassination attempt on him. But then this other passerby, Good Samaritan, has a rag to come up and help wipe it off. That's when the agent actually was applied. It was fascinating, yeah. And they talked about it. And then apparently the second one, which was the second assassin, immediately went to wash it off because one drop of this nerve agent will kill a human in, no time at all. Oh, my God. And she was wiping it all over his face to try to help clean him up. And that was actually when the nerve agent was administered. So, yeah, that was a really cool story to hear. I mean, it's horrible because somebody died, but it was a really cool story to hear how they did that.
It's terrifying to know that stuff exists, that somebody could wipe something on your face and you could be dead in like 20 minutes.
Yep, yeah, absolutely.
I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah, no.
I think most people call it Taco Bell ground beef.
That's your body has adapted to process it through your intestine, but if you actually get it on your skin, it'll absorb through your pores and kill you in 20 minutes.
Yeah, it's all that pink stuff.
Oh my God, I read a horrible thing years ago. Supposedly Taco Bell meat is like there's different levels of meat. Supposedly Taco Bell meat is like the scrapings off the slaughter room floor.
Oh
yeah. No. What was it? Like dog food is typically like grade C beef, and then the meat you get at most fast food joints is rated D.
Exactly. God,
you know what though? It
so
tastes
bad.
good with some fire sauce and some nachos. I'm just saying, give me some more of it. We just had Taco Bell a few days ago.
Well, Killer Miller wasn't eating that crappy meat. He was living on that assassin money, having steaks.
Yeah,
Yes.
no kidding.
And he eventually settled in Pecos, Texas, where he was hired by Reeves County Sheriff George A. Bud Frazier as a deputy. That was a weird thing. It happened a lot of times back then. These guys would be outlaws one year, a deputy the next, go back to being outlaw. It was
You got to go where the money is, man.
Yeah. The interview process was real lax, I feel like, back then. They didn't do
You ever
a lot of
kill
background
anybody?
checks.
Nope.
Sounds good to me. Sounds good to me. You're sheriff now.
It turns up all my references are no longer here with us.
Well, at the time, he hired this guy, Killer Miller, to be a deputy because cattle rustling and horse theft had really increased in the Pecos Valley. And I guess this Miller, spent a lot of his time pursuing these thieves, but when he never captured any, it raised suspicions in the mind of local gunfighter and hard case Barney Riggs, who just happened to be the sheriff's brother-in-law. And as the increase in thefts had started to occur just about the same time Miller became deputy, Riggs pointed out that perhaps Miller should be looked as a suspect and suggested he should be fired. Frazier confronted the deputy Miller. He laughed off the accusation. But this kind of started a rift between Frazier and Miller, and ended up becoming a feud. He ended up eventually being fired, and this feud lasts several years. And this is such a crazy story. I can't believe I've never heard this before. They get in numerous gunfights. This guy, Sheriff Frazier and Miller, they get in 3 gunfights and over the next few years. And the first gunfight, Miller is gunned down in the middle of the street, and then assumes that he is dead. The sheriff does, and leaves him there. Some people drag him off. He had a chest plate. Like a metal chest plate underneath his trench coat. Yeah, like old-fashioned armor. And supposedly, like, he always wore this, like, trench coat no matter how hot it was. And then they're like, oh, well, that's why. Well, so, I don't know how, but word never gets back to Sheriff Frazier that he had the chest plate. He gets drug away. He goes and recovers from his kind of superficial wounds in his limbs. And then Frazier finds out he's alive. They tracks him down again. They have a second gun battle. You would think this guy would maybe try and shoot him in the head this time. Shoots him down in the street again. Again, the chest plate saves him.
No kidding.
And this was not good for Sheriff Frazier because then the third time they fight, Miller shoots Frazier in the face, and so he wins the only battle that counts.
Yeah. No kidding.
And again, you would think that if you shot a guy twice, and he's still like out there hanging around, you would make it like a huge priority in life to find that guy and put a bullet in his head.
And that's his former boss that was trying to shoot him.
Yep.
See, I feel like Miller's coming back and finally getting his red stapler back, and then shooting him in the face on the way out and burning the building down.
Exactly.
He finally did it. And he never was convicted for anything. He finally was caught.
What charge do you press? Hey, this guy tried to kill me twice. He tried a third time and I shot him in the face. Am I really going to face some charges here?
Yeah. Well, and that was when the posse got him. So on his final trial, the local people, they knew they're like, this guy is a assassin. This guy just killed, the sheriff. It's like, we're not waiting for him to slip out on a technicality. And that's when a posse actually takes him from the courthouse, takes him to the barn. And that's when he's hung with his final words of "let her rip."
So in this lawless society, can you imagine being on the jury of the people trying to convict it? Not guilty. My name is Adam. He's not guilty. Remember me, all right? Not guilty. You don't want to find him guilty if you're on that jury.
Oh yeah, I mean these guys escaped all the time. It's crazy. Like Billy the Kid. Well, we'll read about him a little bit later. He's coming up. He escaped numerous times from jail. It's like, but you're exactly right. If I'm just some ranch hand, and I'm on a jury, I am covering my ass. I'm like, looks innocent to me. They could have 17 eyewitnesses. We were all there when he blasted this guy in the head. I don't know. I don't buy it.
Where's the proof?
Yeah, he seems like a nice guy. He seems like a very nice guy. I'd buy him a drink.
You got pictures? You got sketches? Any drawings? Nope. No.
Right. Exactly. And that's the first 5. So that is 10 through 6.
All right.
Awesome.
Yeah, those first 5 were fantastic. This is such a cool topic. My father is a huge Western fan, so I cannot wait for him to listen to this episode. He listens to about half of our podcasts. You know, he's not a big podcast guy, but I know he's going to like some of the Western stories.
It's a fascinating period of history. It's like, I didn't know, again, how much was kind of like glamorized by Hollywood, but it seems like some of those Westerns, it was fairly accurate. Like there really was just a lot of killing. Like people just got shot and robbed constantly.
Complete lawless society.
Our Oklahoma
yeah.
history classes in high school were very interesting.
Oh, I bet.
A lot of the state histories aren't as fun. Ours was really fun because there's so much crazy stuff that happened back then.
Well, yeah, because they didn't have, when these places were territories, they might have like one marshal or one sheriff, and it's not like it's some guy who went to police academy. It was like, do you want to try and clean this up? And some guy would be like, I guess. And then and then he's the sheriff, but he might be like the only law person for thousands of square miles. And, and he's trying to stay alive himself. So if you're one dude and there's 30 guys in some cattle rustling gang in your area, you're not going to like storm into the saloon and be like, all right, everybody, shit's changing around here. You're just going to be like, please, come on, guys. Could you please just rob a little bit less? Could you do a little less robbing?
Can you play nice with the Hamiltons, please?
Right, exactly.
All right, well, cool. Let's take a break. We're going to take a break here in studio. Dan, I'm sure you want to get some drink, maybe use the bathroom. We're going to come back and deliver the next 5 from Dan Cummins, and then at the end of the episode, we'll let's give some plugs and whatnot to you. And you're also going to be back down here at the Improv sometime in June-ish.
Yeah, so I'm hoping to come see you guys. Yeah, I'll be there. I can't remember the exact dates, but I'll be in June. I know it's up at dancummins.tv, but I think the first weekend, maybe. I don't know.
Well, very cool. All right, so let's take a break, and we will be right back. Village Idiot Pub. You locals know about it. You guys from out of town have to check them out.
Village Idiot Pub is now a proud sponsor with Living Podcariously and the Twisted 10 podcasts.
It's more than just about commercials, though. The cast here will be taking our show on the road to Village Idiot to record some episodes as well as hold events. They have over 30 beers on tap, including ciders and Hefeweizen, my favorite, as well as hundreds of bottle choices.
Adam, you forgot my favorite, all the delicious wine. So get your friends together and enjoy the board games, puzzles, and the giant Jenga.
Let the owner, Jason, as well as the rest of the staff there, take excellent care of your beer drinking needs.
Mention either one of our shows to the staff and get 10% off your tab.
Tuesday is open mic, Wednesday is trivia, Thursday is karaoke, Friday and Saturday night are live music.
Visit them at 4 Harrison Street, Suite 103, Cocoa, Florida, or Village Idiot Pub on Facebook. And don't forget, they are a dog-friendly location, so bring your friends, family, and fur babies.
Hey, it's Adam. If you enjoy the hosts or the content of The Twisted 10, be sure to check out our other show. It's called Living Podcariously. While The Twisted 10 may get crass and explicit occasionally, it holds no water to Living Podcariously. We do get a little bit more rough and raw on that show. We have a lot of fun producing it and have had some awesome guests. And as always, thanks for listening.
Okay, we have 45 seconds before the anesthesia wears off, so we have to make this quick.
That's not very good anesthesia.
Focus now. Remember why we're here.
Honestly, no. Sandwiches?
Soon. Look, we're here to tell the Twisted 10 listeners about our show, the Conversation Hat Podcast, in which a hat tells us to talk about geek culture, the arts and the abstract, features guests from the creative industries along with original sketches and music.
Oh yeah. I guess we'd mentioned that the Conversation Hat is available on iTunes, SoundCloud, and on StabbedPanda.com, right?
I really wish we'd scripted this before breaking in.
Liam, they're starting to wake up.
Oh, darn, there's no time. Come on, through the window.
We forgot the sandwiches.
DJ Gil Lugo is bringing back the old school.
Just a castaway, an island lost at sea. Another lonely day, no one here but me. Oh,
And welcome back to the Twisted 10. Again, thank you very much, Dan Cummins, for guest hosting this really cool Western episode and Western villains. We appreciate that. So if you want, recap the top 10 or the top 5, 10 through 6, just the names of those guys again to refresh the listeners as far as who they were. Shuffling through paper, sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. No, we had number 10 was Jesse James. Number 9 was Rufus Buck. Number 8 is Cherokee Bill Goldsby. I still can't believe that's his name. Number 7 is Blackjack Ketchum. That is a proper outlaw name.
Yes, it is.
And we have number 5, James Killer Miller, which is a terrifying name.
I think I might, I'm just saying, I think I have my
Already?
guess picked
You
already.
still have 5 more to go.
I know. I think I
Five
know
more.
what it is. No internet searches have been happening here for your
good,
names,
good.
but I think I might know. I'm just saying.
Jesse James,
Well,
right?
Jesse James is the fake one. Yeah.
Well, number 5, hopefully you know this is not the fake one, is Butch Cassidy.
Oh yeah.
Butch Cassidy of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Now he's an interesting one. Butch Cassidy apparently never killed anybody. He was just into the money. He was not a killer, not like Killer Miller. And he was, considered one of the greatest hustlers of the kind of American West. And a really cool kind of mystery about the end of his life, which I'll get into in a second. But he was born Robert Leroy Parker on April 13th, 1866 in Beaver, Utah. What a name.
All right.
Beaver, Utah. And he was the oldest of 13 Mormon children. So he's a Mormon outlaw, which also makes him unusual.
Huh.
And he found work on a bunch of ranches and stuff as a kid. And then he met this local rancher named Mike Cassidy, and he admired him so much, he took on the name of Butch Cassidy. That's where the Cassidy part came in. So by all accounts, he was a very charming thief, well liked, and again, never killed anybody. His first taste of robbery came in June 1889 when he and 3 other cowboys made off with $20,000 from the San Miguel Valley Bank in Telluride, Colorado.
Another good pull.
Yeah, exactly. And Telluride's a really cool. Telluride to this day looks like a Wild West town. If they do a little festival there and stuff, and it's just if you ever see a picture of Telluride, Colorado, it has one of those classic main streets where you're like, oh, I could see saloons and gambling halls and little horses and stuff here.
Huh.
After purchasing a ranch of his own in Dubois, Wyoming in 1890, he continued to rustle cattle and horses. And then he was actually caught and jailed for 2 years in 1894. So he's one of the few guys that actually served some decent time. And kind of an interesting thing about him, despite the criminal background, and it kind of shows why he never tried to escape or anything, he supposedly was really good about keeping his word. So even though he was like a train robber and a bank robber, he was also strangely honorable.
Well, that's how he got the movie.
Exactly. That's how he got the 3-picture deal with MGM or something.
Honor amongst thieves, I guess.
Well, there's this one story, I guess, like it was the night before he was to begin his sentence. He'd asked to be released to kind of like hang out with his family before serving his term, and they let him go. And then he came back to jail the next day and was like, "All right, I'm ready to serve now."
This is what set the precedence for all Wall Street criminals. That's
yeah, no kidding. Upon his full release in 1896, he returned to crime with several other well-known outlaws, including Hera Longbaugh, the Sundance Kid, and William Ellsworth Lay, Elsie Lay, Ben Kilpatrick, the Tall Texan, and Harvey Logan, Kid Curry. I love how these guys all have nicknames.
Those are awesome gangster names. I'm just saying. Obviously, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid is that's the famous duo that you hear about.
Yeah.
But every one
I kind of
those
like
names
Kid
are
Curry.
Kid Curry. It sounds like it sounds like a DJ
or a rapper.
It does. It
DJ
sounds like
Kid
he goes to Vegas a couple times a year, and and puts on a rave. And
you see him at South by Southwest at one of the smaller towns. Yeah,
exactly. He does Coachella. He's big in Coachella. Beginning in August 1896, he does some bank robberies in Idaho, my home state, Montpelier, Idaho. They make off more than $7,000. Then they hit banks and trains in South Dakota, New Mexico, Nevada, Wyoming. And then they have a hideout. I love this in Hole in the Wall Pass in Johnson County, Wyoming.
Yep.
I think every good gang has to have a good hideout.
Hole in the Wall Pass.
And so they have they're called like the Wild Bunch is their gang's name. And they kind of became famous in their day too. It's like the media kind of liked them. So all the little like local papers around the West are writing about their bank robberies and train robberies. And some of the guys were like good looking, so they became like these kind of like celebrities. Before there was movie stars. So they in the end Each new robbery, the bunch becomes better and better known, better liked by the American public. The robberies become bigger. One of the largest, a $70,000 haul from a train just outside of Folsom, New Mexico. Ooh. That's a big one back there. Unable to stop the bunch, the Union Pacific Railroad went so far as to propose to Cassidy a pardon in exchange for just him to promise to stop robbing their trains.
Just stop. Leave us alone.
We'll drop the charges. Just stop it.
We can't catch you. Just please. We'll let you live a normal life. Just stop robbing us. And I guess Cassidy formally turned the offer down. He was like, I appreciate the offer, but I'm going to keep robbing your stuff.
Can you imagine receiving that pardon offer in the mail? Like, all right, so what kind of summons am I getting today? Please stop robbing us. We'll let you go and we won't chase you.
And the smugness that he had, you guys are cute. No, that's not going to happen.
It's way more profitable for me just to continue robbing you guys blind.
You guys are adorable. I love it because you're saying the press was all in it. It's like the first reality show. And then then Union Pacific was like, hey, listen, we need to stop this. And it's like, we're not canceling. No, we just got renewed for another season. No,
exactly. Our ratings are off the charts right now. There's no way we're stopping this.
The Wyoming Express loves us.
Exactly.
So since they can't make a deal with them, the Union Pacific hires the Pinkertons, and that's those kind of like the precursors to modern detectives, who would track people down anywhere. So the Pinkerton agency chases them actually out of the country all the way to South America. These guys end up fleeing all the way down to South America, and there's one story that supposedly they rob banks and trains and stuff down in South America as well. And then the Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid lost their lives in a shootout with South American soldiers in Bolivia on November 6, 1908. But other people don't think they died. The truth has never been fully settled. Some historical evidence suggests that Cassidy faked his death, returned to the United States under a new name, William T. Phillips, and spent his final few decades living in Spokane, Washington, not dying until 1937. So who knows? And eventually, of course, their part of their lives was turned into the 1969 Oscar-winning movie Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid with Paul Newman as Butch Cassidy and Robert Redford as the Sundance Kid. So that's kind of one of those interesting ones where did he die or did he not die?
As a South American, I can vouch for the ineptitude of the Bolivian army. That would have been the only thing the Bolivian army ever killed.
Was this one guy? That's the one thing they did right.
The one guy, and even that's disputed.
Exactly. Yeah, maybe killed him.
Yeah.
Okay. Number 4 might be my favorite. This is the one where I'm like, God, I kind of wish I would have done this guy instead of Billy the Kid. It's Doc Holiday.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
I'm your Huckleberry.
Yes, Tombstone is my favorite movie ever, and I didn't do enough research initially on Doc Holiday, and I thought some of the initial things I read kind of made it sound like it was all made up. But I found, digging a little deeper, that, you never know exactly what to believe on these things because they didn't have the same kind of documentation that we have now. So a lot of stuff is up for kind of grabs as far as did it happen, did it not? I'm going to go with the more adventurous side of journalism because it makes for a better story with Doc Holiday.
Calm down now, CNN.
The Hunter S. Thompson approach is what we call this.
Yeah, exactly. The fear and loathing approach. August 14th, 1851, John Henry Doc Holiday is born. When he's just 15, his mother dies of consumption, of tuberculosis, and she's probably who gave it to him because if you've watched Tombstone, he's called a lunger. He had consumption from the time he was about 15 on. And he despite having consumption, he did enroll in college in Philadelphia in 1870. And in 1872, he graduated with a dentist degree. So again, from the movie, he really was a dentist.
Oh, wow.
And he was also supposedly a hot-tempered guy who was quick with a gun. And in October 1873, he packs up and heads for Dallas because he needed to get to a drier climate or kind of head out west. That's what they recommended at the time. All these doctors were like, if you had tuberculosis, they're like, get to the Southwest.
It's drier out there. It's like treating bronchitis at the time. They're like, yeah, it's dry.
Yeah. Yep, that's all they had. They couldn't cure it, but they're like, it's drier. You'll probably live longer. And but supposedly he has a shooting incident there, and then moves. And there's different speculation. Some say he moved initially just because of the doctor's thing. Some say it was because he killed a guy in Georgia and kind of had to flee west to get away from that as well. That's what Masterson ended up saying, or Masterson, a guy who was part of the whole Wyatt Earp mythology later on. Initially, he worked with a dentist by the name of Dr. John Seeger in Dallas, but then the coughing spells he would get from tuberculosis, you can't be a Wild West dentist trying to extract somebody's tooth and then constantly having violent coughs and like cut up their face.
Or coughing in their mouth, like, hey, listen, we took care of that cavity, but FYI, you also have tuberculosis.
So even though he has a dental degree, the tuberculosis keeps him from actually getting able to practice on it. And so then he heads further west to New Mexico and Arizona, and he was kind of known around the places he would go for being an unusual character because he was very well educated. He came from a wealthy family, and he could speak Latin. He really could play the piano very well, just like the guy in Tombstone. He was a fancy dresser and did have the manners of like a Southern gentleman, just like, Val Kilmer's portrayal.
It'd have been kind of interesting to hear if when you're researching for his dentist profession, back in those days, the dentists were also bloodletters and would do transfusions. I wonder if he tried to, sustain more life, taking blood out of some of his patients and then, infusing himself with their blood just to try to clean himself out.
Yeah, there was no record of anything that came up as far as transfusions, but I mean, who knows? Maybe it's like, he probably tried a lot of things to keep himself alive by the very end there. He was his intelligence, like if you watch the movie, he's a good gambler, and supposedly that's true.
Yeah, supposedly he could count cards.
Yep. He was very smart, very good at gambling, and since he couldn't work as a dentist, that's kind of how he began to make his living. And he was a drunk because, he knew, especially as a doctor, he was going to die. Like nobody lived for that long with consumption back then. So he knew he was kind of a dead man walking. And to kind of protect himself from gambling, he did supposedly practice a lot with his 6-shooter. And again, like the movie, he did have a long, just wicked-looking knife that he became very proficient with. So he wanted to, even though he was going to die, he wanted to gamble and kind of live as long as possible. And the first account of a gunfight with him was 1875, where he killed a saloon keeper over a little gambling disagreement. And then he had to flee Dallas. That was where he first killed his guy. And he makes it, farther west to Fort Richardson, where he kills a soldier in another disagreement over gambling. Now a reward is offered for his capture. So now he's pursued by some Texas Rangers. He flees again, makes it to Kansas territory, which is now part of Colorado. And it makes stops along the way in Pueblo, Leadville, Georgetown, Central City, where he leaves 3 more dead bodies. He finally settles in Denver for a time. He assumed the name of Tom Mackey. He was dealing faro at this place called Babbitt's House. And he basically got in a disagreement at a gambling table and this time used his knife and nearly cut the dude's head off he was having a problem with. Townsfolk didn't appreciate that. Probably frowned
on that a little bit.
They frowned on that. They thought it was a little much. And now he gets to New Mexico, where he meets Wyatt Earp, just like the movie, and where he meets that lady that was his girlfriend in the movie who was known as Big Nose Kate, which is a horrible nickname for a woman.
Yeah, no kidding.
Supposedly she was beautiful. She was a prostitute and kind of gambler herself who was very pretty but did have a prominent nose. So she got the sad nickname of Big Nose Kate. And then all the kind of stuff, I won't go into all the detail because a lot of it is from the movie, but all that stuff where the confrontation with like Curly Bill Brocious and Johnny Ringo, there wasn't a showdown with Johnny Ringo like the movie, but he did get in some shootouts, the OK Corral, the shootouts with the cowboy gang, that did happen. He did join up with Wyatt Earp to track down some of the cowboys. And he did kill a number of those guys in some of the shootouts, and he did end up dying back in Colorado of tuberculosis. And I thought this was interesting that his last words here were as he's dying in that this Denver kind of what they call them. They were places where you went with when you had consumption. It was I should have wrote down the word
brothel.
It was like a hospital, but it was like a hospital specifically for people who had consumption, and it was just for them to kind of like have open air and live a little bit long. Sanatorium.
Yes.
Sanatorium. And I guess his last words were like, as he felt, I guess, his body start to go, he just like looked down at his feet and just says, "Isn't that funny?" Like kind of like that final scene they have, like with him talking to Wyatt Earp. He always assumed he would die in some kind of gunfight or something, and not just laying in a hospital bed.
Yeah.
Huh.
And they were friends to the very end, him and Wyatt Earp. So that stuff is true. And also Doc Holiday leads us to number 3, which is another true guy. Maybe.
Yeah, if you trust me.
Another cast member of Tombstone, and that's Curly Bill. And if you remember him, Curly Bill Brocious, that's the guy who was like above Johnny Ringo in Tombstone. He was like the head of the cowboy gang. And he was born in 1841, dead by 1882. Gunman, cattle rustler, outlaw, and he was in a number of conflicts with lawmen of the Earp family. That's kind of what he was known for. He was one of the guys who killed Morgan Earp, Wyatt Earp's brother. And he was also he was eventually killed by Wyatt Earp. And that scene in Tombstone where they have the big shootout in the river, where Curly Bill is shooting at Wyatt Earp, and then Wyatt Earp supposedly kind of marches forward. Supposedly there's some truth to that. I'm sure made more dramatic for Hollywood.
Right.
Sure.
But he did fire numerous times at Wyatt, missed, and then Wyatt just got him at close range.
Oh, wow.
So that is, and there's that thing where he was put in jail earlier in the movie for killing the Sheriff White, that old man.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Where Sheriff White's trying to disarm him, and then all of a sudden he flips his gun around at the last minute and shoots that guy in the head. Or not the guy in the head, but shoots him in the stomach or wherever it was. That supposedly also is true, and he really was taken to trial for that. And then basically he got off on that because they said they couldn't prove it was intentional. He claimed it was a misfire. So Curly Bill, his story.
How would you like to use that excuse every time you're in a gunfight and you miss? It was a misfire. It went off by itself. It was an accident.
Exactly.
It's a hell of a defense to have.
There's actually a legal defense. It's called the Shaggy defense. And it's based off the song It Wasn't Me. It is denying guilt in the face of just so much evidence against you. And it is actually deemed the Shaggy defense. That is a
Seriously?
real thing. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not doing
That
the
is
twist.
awesome.
I have no twist. That is a real thing.
All right. Well, the next guy, number 2 on the list, was not part of the Tombstone mythology. I like his nickname, though, John Sidewinder Dalton.
Nice.
And he was Virginia City's most infamous gunslinger, born Jonathan Michael Dalton. Not as exciting of a name initially. And,
that's a manly man's name. I'm John Dalton.
Yeah. John Dalton. I know. It reminds me of isn't Roadhouse? Isn't Dalton it's Dalton, right? Swayze's character.
Yeah, it is Dalton. What's his first name in that?
I don't know.
I think he's just known as Dalton. I think he's just called Dalton.
True. Yeah. Rips the guy's throat out. Best sequel.
Oh, yeah, exactly. The throat rip. Oh, my God. Well, he's born into a comfortable life, kind of like Doc Holiday. His mom was a school teacher. Dad was a banker. Wanted John to follow in his footsteps. However, he wanted a life of adventure. And at 17, he went to work on the Central Pacific Railroad. And life on the Central Pacific brought him all the way out to Promontory Point, Utah, which was the end of the railroad at that time in 1860. Met a group of men heading to Virginia City, Nevada to find silver. There was the Comstock lode. That was a huge silver strike, like America's biggest. And it was hit in 1859. And so he went out there to kind of prospect and make his kind of mining money. And he did hit a small lode of his own in May of 1861, but then had his fortune wiped out when the Virginia City bank he deposited all his money in was hit by the Ungers gang and wiped out. And he was this is kind of where he shifted in life. He was not happy. This is before they had the FDIC kind of protecting your assets. If the bank lost the money, they were just like, sorry, buddy, you're broke now.
Yep.
You're shit out of luck. And so he, not content to let his money disappear, he tracks one of the Ungers, Jesse Unger, to a hideout nearby Gold Hill and shoots Jesse dead, but does not recover his money. And apparently he shot Jesse in the back. And so because of that, he was charged with murder. It's like one of those kind of Wild West things where if you shoot a man face to face, maybe it was a fair draw. You shoot a guy in the back, you're a murderer.
Technicalities mean everything.
Exactly. It's like the previous guy. It's like, the gun went off accidentally.
It was an accident. It went up by itself. But I got my money back. Well, no, he didn't.
A lot of technicalities back then. But also the local sheriff, Pap Anderson, was considered...
Did you say Pap?
He was Pap Anderson. These guys have some fun little names.
Y'all are like a bunch of little third grade boys.
Yeah, I know. They like their nicknames back then. They were really into them.
Yeah, you'll never let this down, Mr. Pap Smear Anderson.
Mr. Pap Smear. That would be a tough Pap Smear.
That's a bank robber you don't mess with.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so this guy was supposedly in the pockets of the Unger gang a little bit, and that kind of helped him get a reward put on his head. So now he's an outlaw. Now he can't find honest work. And he acquired the Sidewinder nickname when a prospector and gun battle witness told authorities, quote, he moved like a sidewinder across the mesa, firing shots and moving with a rapidness that made it damn near impossible to return fire. So he was a quick fella. And he ends up robbing like kind of other mines in the area. Most of the owners of the mines he robbed were associated somehow with either Sheriff Anderson or the Unger brother gang, the remaining guy, George Unger. Between the years of 1861 and 1864, he's said to have robbed about $30,000 worth of cash and loot. So not like Butch Cassidy, but he did all right. And he finally encountered George Unger in a saloon in Emma's Peak, Nevada on November 3rd, 1864, acting on a tip from Pap. George and a few remaining members of the gang snuck into the Silver Dollar Saloon where they found Dalton playing tarot with his back to the door. Before Dalton ever turned and saw Unger and the other two men he came in with, George called out, "So what were Jesse's final words, or did you even give him time to speak, you sneaky son of a bitch?" Recognizing George's voice, Dalton spun, tried to get a shot off, but George already had his gun drawn, and I guess he was shot about 12 times between George and Frank Hardy and Elliot Stein, two of the other Unger gang members, and fell dead to the floor. Never got to have any final words. He didn't have time to get him out, and he only made it to 23 years old.
Oof.
So yeah, a lot of these guys. But he did live longer than number one on the list, which was the topic of Timesuck this week, and that's Billy the Kid. Billy the Kid only lived 21 years, which is crazy to me. The amount of life he lived in 21 years. He was born William Bonney. He was born Henry McCarty, then became William Bonney, then became Billy the Kid. A lot of these guys changed their names back then. He's born in 1859. His mom also had tuberculosis, also died of consumption when he was young. His dad was dead, I think, like by the time he was a toddler. He never knew his dad. And so he was on his own very young. He had a stepdad, but the stepdad left. And so he's on his own at like 13 in New Mexico. And his kind of, I feel like I can go off book here. I got so much of his stuff in my head.
Have you already recorded the episode for Billy the Kid?
I did. Yeah, Billy the Kid's out right now. Yeah.
Oh, is it? All right.
Yeah. It just came out today. And so he is like, I don't know, like 13. He's on his own. He's working at this little local kind of restaurant. And his first crime he's convicted of was kind of like a stupid kid crime. Some older outlaw talked him into stealing some clothes from a nearby laundry kind of place. He does it. He gets caught. The guy lets him off with a warning initially. But now he's got a little bit of a taste. Oh, no, I'm sorry. That was the second one. The butter. That was even funnier. The first thing he stole was butter. He stole butter from a local rancher. I guess and then he tried selling it to a local store. That's such a teenage crime. I'm going to make some butter money.
Yep.
Gets a warning for that. The second time, he is not let off with a warning. And they hold him in jail, and he escapes. He was really good, it turns out, at escaping from prison and jail. He escapes, and now he's just a young teenager on his own, and trying to make his way in the New Mexico in the 1870s, which is terrifying. And he's afraid to try and get honest work because he's small for his age, and he's really young. He ends up falling in with this. He becomes a civilian teamster initially at Camp Grant Army Post. So he's trying to haul some logs. And there's this guy. This guy has the best nickname ever. Frank Windy Cahill. Windy Cahill. Sounds like a guy who farts a lot. And this guy picks on him, I guess. And his first murder is he just gets sick of Windy's shit. and while they're wrestling, he pulls his gun and just gut shots him. He's like, this guy had slapped him around several times before, and he was not taken it this day. He shoots this guy. He gets taken into custody and escapes again before trial can start. So now he's killed somebody. And now he really has a hard time finding regular work. And he
that's like that Michael Douglas movie where he gets fired and he just goes on a shooting spree.
Like,
not stand today.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'll never remember the name of that movie.
Is it Walking Tall? No, Standing Tall. Oh my God, what is that movie?
I'm gonna look it up.
Yeah, I can picture the scene when he leaves his car in traffic right now.
Yeah,
but he ends up with this cattle rustling gang called the Boys. And he reluctantly joins their gang, can't find any other work. And then he gets arrested for stealing cattle by this guy named John Tunstall. And this was back in the day, though, when it was hard to find good ranch hands. And the guy who he stole the cattle from says, hey, I'm not going to press charges if you'll work for me. So instead of stealing my cattle, I'll give you an actual job.
Wow.
And this becomes a big deal for him. It's the first guy who gave him an opportunity. He loves this guy, Tunstall, respects him as a boss. And this guy, Tunstall, is in Lincoln County, New Mexico, very lawless. And his cattle ranch is kind of a competing ranch with this other group. They call themselves the House, these Irish guys. And the House wants Tunstall to get the hell out of their area and let them control the whole thing. And so basically the House hires some people, Tunstall hires some people, and for the next several years, there's a war between these two cattle ranches. And during this war, Billy the Kid kills a local sheriff and a couple deputies, and now he becomes wanted. And then the governor of New Mexico is getting tired of this war and says, I'll give amnesty if you guys will just stop unless you have current indictments against you. Well, Billy has an indictment. He's wanted for murder of this sheriff, so it doesn't apply to him. So everybody else gets a pardon, essentially. He doesn't.
That sucks.
Sucks for him. He tries to reach out to the governor and say, man, I don't want to be killing people anymore. I want to be done. And the governor says, well, if you testify against some of the other people that were doing some of these things, I'll let you off. He agrees, testifies, and then basically they're like, nope, just kidding. We're not going to let you off. So then he escapes again from prison.
Now he's got a vengeance.
Yeah, exactly. Now he's vengeance. He's pissed. He ends up killing several people who killed people that he was in this gang with when they were having that Lincoln County war. Eventually, Sheriff Pat Garrett catches him and his posse, takes him to jail. He's tried for murder. They're going to hang him. While waiting to be hung, he manages to escape yet again, and this time he shoots his way out. Somebody sneaks him a pistol in this outhouse, is the theory. When he goes to go to the bathroom, he's taken to the outhouse outside of the courthouse. He gets his pistol, sneaks it, comes back in, slips one of his handcuffs, punches one of the deputies that's in there in the face, shoots him dead. The other deputy had sat outside the building. That deputy tries coming back in. He ran up to the armory, got a shotgun. When the guy's coming back and basically yelling, have you seen Billy? He supposedly stands up in the window, goes, hi, Bob. And when the guy looks up at him, he blasts him in the face with a shotgun.
Jesus.
His breakout was choreographed by John Woo.
Exactly.
Oh, and Falling Down was the name of that.
Falling Down.
Michael Douglas.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Well, he lives on the lam for a few months, and then finally Sheriff Pat Garrett catches up with him in Fort Sumner, New Mexico, and supposedly Pat Garrett is interviewing somebody else about his whereabouts, and then as he's interviewing this guy in this little apartment, essentially, Billy the Kid walks into the doorway, and it's dark, it's at night, so they're like candlelit. So as he sees him approach, Sheriff Pat Garrett sneaks back into the shadows, and then as Billy comes through the doorway, he's trying to see if he hears something, and his last words were, "Quién es?" You know, like who is it? Mm-hmm. Who is it? And Sheriff Pat Garrett, this guy has escaped 4 times. He's not taking any chances, and he just lights him up. So he never saw it coming. His death was pretty unceremonial.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I remember hearing Billy the Kid spoke Spanish. So that
Yep.
totally fits.
Yeah. So that is the 10. So out of those 10, and I can give a recap here.
Yeah, run through the names of the 10 again, because I'm pretty sure I've got it. I think I know.
Okay.
I think I know who. I think I know the fake one.
So 10 is Jesse James. 9 is Rufus Buck. 8 is Cherokee Bill Goldsby. I love saying his last name with Cherokee Bill. 7 is Blackjack Ketchum. And then number 6 is James Killer Miller. Number 5 is Butch Cassidy. Number 4 is Doc Holiday. Number 3 is, sorry, I had too much stuff. It's Curly Bill Brocious. Number 2 is John Sidewinder Dalton. And number 1 is Billy the Kid.
All right, what do you guys think?
Right. Now, I wanted to say Doc, and if it wasn't for the fact that I know Doc Holliday's a real person, only because he outran the Texas Rangers, and no one survives an encounter with Chuck Norris. So let's just... But then Doc Holiday is Doc Holiday. I got to go with Sidewinder. I think Sidewinder may be made up.
What about you, Andrea?
I'm still debating between 2.
In the era where they all make up their own really kick-ass names, you know, they can rename themselves and then give themselves their own nicknames.
I'm thinking Rufus.
That's the first one I was going to go with, because if you've got a name like Rufus, yeah, see that could be good. Dan could have spun this to be Blackjack, could have been the made up one because it's got a cool nickname and we would overlook it. I'm going to go Rufus as well, though. I think I'm going to go Rufus as the made up one.
So, Andrea, what are you going with?
I had picked Rufus, but he picked it too, so maybe I should go with Blackjack Ketchum. So we all have different ones.
So you got 1 for Blackjack, 1 for Rufus, and then you got me for Sidewinder.
Okay, well, one of you is correct. It's Sidewinder. Sidewinder is the made-up one. So Jay wins. Nice. Jay wins.
Yes.
You almost spilled your beer. You're so excited.
I almost did. I don't win much. Don't take this from me. I don't have a lot.
Well, hopefully that was okay, man. It was a crazy amount of people to look up, so hopefully that made sense.
Well,
But,
let me put it this way: you set the bar for a guest host very, very high.
Yeah, he did.
For your amount of research and just the entertainment factor, and it was a very, very good episode. And
oh, well, that's good. Thanks, man. It was fun to do. It's such a fascinating period of history. It's like, and it was cool researching it because, again, I thought Hollywood kind of made most of that stuff up. But it apparently it really was just an insane, lawless, kind of chaotic time in history.
Where you can actually make one up, and even like they thought, well, no, that one seems legit. Let's go for the real one. It's just so much craziness happened. Yeah, it's easy to make one up, and just kind of we'll fit that in there. We'll see how that goes.
I mean, I think if I was listening, I might even think like Killer Miller was made up. Like that guy,
was my third choice.
Some weird assassin who just like never drank or smoked. He seems like a character in a movie.
I did because I actually have heard of Killer Miller, and when
really?
You asked me and I said no because I didn't want to give it away. I was like because I knew one was a twist.
Nice.
I had to catch myself because you said Killer Miller. I was like, yeah, I did a report on my favorite assassins at in a darker part of my life, and Killer Miller came up in it. Yeah,
I didn't want it to be Killer Miller because I was found that out of all of the stories, short of the ones that we've seen, Hollywood redo, that one was the most fascinating to me. That whole story behind, especially when he's an owner of a saloon and
the consummate professional. That's what he was.
Yeah, that is crazy.
Well, that's really cool.
Yeah, and I might do a time suck about him, and thanks for letting me promote that too. If anybody likes these stories, I just do kind of one for your listeners, like one subject each week. Billy the Kid's this week, but it's not always people. Sometimes it's like Flat Earth Theory was an episode. Another one was Elon Musk and his mission to Mars, and another one was artificial intelligence. So.
Yeah, no, it's such a cool idea to just take some it's like, because it's me it's basically you falling into a black hole or a rabbit hole. Like, I remember once I was looking up hotel rates in Los Angeles, and I ended up looking up the rate of recidivism in Finland. I don't know why. I don't know how. I didn't even know what recidivism meant when I started looking at hotel rates, but I know it now, and I'm pretty well versed in the Finnish penal system.
That's hilarious. Yeah.
But I love that idea.
Well, I was doing it anyway on some level, and that's why I wanted to do it as a podcast. It's like I would take a break from doing whatever work I'm supposed to be doing and just look something up, or I'd be like reading an ESPN article, and all of a sudden, O.J. Simpson pops up, and so then I click on him, and then I'm reading his Wikipedia page, and then somebody else that he was associated with comes up, and then I click on that link, and then 15 minutes later, I'm reading about sea monsters somehow. I'm like, what the hell?
When I was a kid, my parents, whenever I would act up to punish us, they would get they would make us write out of the encyclopedia. We had a whole volume of the World Book Encyclopedia, and they didn't tell us what to write. They would just right out of the encyclopedia for the next 2 hours.
That's great.
So, at the end of every encyclopedia article, it says, see also. So I got really into stuff, and it's really cool finding that now. Like, I'll just go listen to this and see what rabbit hole I can find myself at the bottom of.
Did you have all the letters for the encyclopedia?
We did. S was a fucking nightmare.
Wow. we got ours from the grocery store, so we never got very many. They had like one book for so much, and you could go back. So
it's a different life in Miami and Oklahoma.
Got as many. We had like half of them.
Some of the other episodes of Timesuck that Dan Cummins has out there, I was amazed with. Your very first episode was Lizard Illuminati Conspiracy.
Oh yeah,
and I still think Trump is a lizard man. And the orange alligator didn't help.
Exactly.
He's got the great clown scare of 2016, Corey Haim episode, robots and artificial intelligence. You've got the entire episode on Elon Musk's Mars missions, which is absolutely fascinating. Krampus. There's a ton of them, and here's the other cool thing that you do that is a really neat way to promote it, especially for your listeners. You release one a week, unless you have you get 100 new ratings and subscriptions or whatever on iTunes. Then you release a bonus episode. So he's got a few bonus episodes after he's hit 100. What do you call it? 5-star reviews on there. Yeah, it's cool. So absolutely.
I think I'll be doing another bonus one in a next week. It looks like it's getting close, and I kind of have been saying in advance what it's going to be. And this one's about Hitler's rise to power in the 30s, because it's like, I don't know. Every time there's a new president, they say they make comparisons to Hitler, and so I just wanted to look into. Is there any truth to that? It's not necessarily about Trump or anything. I'm not trying to get partisan,
right?
But I think it's just a good thing to be familiar with, and it is so scary. what they did back in Germany and how they kept so many things hidden from people. They shut down the media. They controlled the narrative. And just under people's noses, all these horrible laws were getting passed.
Yep.
And then by the time it got kind of like, in an obviously evil direction, it was almost too late. And they created such fear, and people were scared to report because they didn't want to get in trouble. And it's just terrifying.
We talked a little bit about on Hitler in one of the villain episodes in the past on the Twisted 10, and he started out as a pretty good guy. He did some things. I mean, granted, his bads greatly outweigh the goods. But he started out as an animal activist, and he would pass all these giant laws on animal abuse and in support of treating animals with better care than they did back then. But
not Jewish animals.
Not Jewish animals. No.
There's actually a local comic out here. I'll give him a shout out real quick. Chris Green does a great bit about Hitler, and that's odd that one would say that. But he tells could you imagine how different things would have been if somebody would have just liked one of his paintings?
Exactly.
This is an original Hitler. He is, of course, the only artist famous for painting Happy Jesus.
I know it is weird how just certain events or if he wouldn't have been sent to prison for those 4 years for he tried to kind of like stage a little minor coup, but then it was like while he was in prison that he formulated his whole Mein Kampf and got really super anti-Semitic and like went on. But it's like it is weird when you look into history where it's like, God, if like you said, if he would have been a more successful artist, if he would have not went to jail here, and none of it would have happened.
If it would have been a little Jewish art dealer that would have picked him up one day.
No kidding. Exactly.
Or if Billy the Kid had actually been pardoned, then maybe things would have been different.
I could just see the buddy comedy movies, Adolf and Jaime. Like, that's all I'm saying right now.
Exactly. Well, thank you guys so much you guys have a really fun podcast, man. And I mentioned it on mine for sure, and I'll mention it again in the future. It's just, I love a top 10 list, and I love that you guys, put a twist on it.
Well, that rocks. Yeah, we appreciate that. Again, by far, you set the bar pretty high for any future guests that we've got. That was an excellent episode. If we can ever do anything to help you out, promote you down here or whatever, when you come down here in June, we're going to come see your special over at the Improv Orlando, right? That's where you're going to be?
Yeah, I'll be at the Improv in Orlando, and and I'll have I think I'm going to get a car that week, and I can come. I know you guys do another podcast, and maybe we can figure something else out.
Yeah, we host Living Podcariously out here. It's a little bit more crass. It's real similar to Tom and Dan, what you did over in Orlando already. Yeah. We're friends with them. We do a few events together with them. And we would love to do that's more of a formal sit-down interview kind of show. Not formal, I say, but that's more where we would do the actual interview and your, what got you from where you were then to where you are now.
Cool.
AKA Jay asking you for every tip you can give.
No, we appreciate you coming on, being a good sport, and again, great list, man. That was awesome. That was fantastic. Cool. Yeah, check out Timesuck, Comedy Central special, and get in the internet black hole that I got into on YouTube because you got a ton of good material out there.
Oh, thanks, man.
We would be honored if when this episode posts, you share it on your social media. That would we'd be absolutely honored for that. But
Jay, Adam, and Andrea, thank you very much, and say hi to Tach. How do you say his name? Is it Tach? I always want to say Tach, but it's Tach.
It's always going to be Tach. No, you said it right. It's Tach. We're going to get Holly in on this one, too. We'll get his girlfriend in.
And maybe if we can time it good, we sometimes get extra passes out to some of the launches. If you're down here around the same time as the launch, we can take you out to the Vehicle Assembly Building or something out there to watch it in person.
He didn't even offer me that, but that's cool, Adam. All right.
Yeah, not every day you get a NASA invitation. That'd be very cool. Or SpaceX.
Yeah.
And I work in a spa, so maybe massage, pedicure, day of beauty.
That would actually probably be better than NASA.
All right. Well, cool. All right. Well, we're going to call it an episode. Don't hang up on the call yet. I'll work out some of the details with you here in just a second. Check out our Facebook page, facebook.com/thetwisted10. Follow us on social media for Twitter. It's at the-twisted10 on Twitter. And I guess that's it.
And Podcast Radio Network on Thursdays?
Thursdays for this show.
Thursdays.
I think Thursdays. Maybe Thursday. I can't remember that schedule. We'll insert that in later, I guess.
We just switched shows. Other one's Wednesday.
We're syndicated, so this will go out across another radio outlet in Central Florida as well. So
and listen to us on Podcast Radio Network Thursdays at 8 p.m.
That's right. All right, well, very cool. So, Dan, thank you very much for coming on tonight. We appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody.
Stay warm.
Thanks.
Haley is bored. Bored with life and endlessly looking for a purpose and her place in the universe. She knows there's more out there than working 9 to 5. She never imagined going on one job interview would change everything and open doors she never knew existed. Ancient family journals, 2 friends, and an irresistible bloodlust to deal with. Turns out being a vampire isn't as sexy as she thought it would be. Between the monster, late-night bloodbaths, and a vengeful ex-love of her man, it keeps her busy. But it doesn't have to be this way. Does it? Should she live free and forever without responsibilities? Or will she find the direction she's been looking for? One thing she does know is that she will fight for what she wants and create the perfect life without traditional vampire restrictions. And she won't let anyone or anything get in her way. Order your copy of the novel First Generation Book 1 by Zoe Emerson on Amazon. Available on paperback and Kindle. For more information, go to zoeemerson.com.